And now, a word from our sponsor. Ayaya songs are about our histories. Ayaya is an Inuit-owned firm that tells our stories in many languages across Canada. They are experts in publishing children's books, usually in syllabics, and they do large multi-language projects like the reports of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Commission. If you need help getting your stories into classrooms or homes in Cree, Inuktitut, or other Indigenous languages, check them out at ayaya.ca. That's ayaya.ca. Ayaya is a proud sponsor of the Roots and Hoots podcast.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Roots and Hoots, a podcast project produced by the Legacy of Hope Foundation. Since 2020, we have been gathering, laughing, learning hard truths, and sharing in community conversations with Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island. Each episode, we learn something new, and we're excited to be sharing this journey with you. Roots and Hoots is about connecting with and celebrating Indigenous people's contributions to their fields of study, work, and cultures. We also speak with allies who share how they are furthering the work of reconciliation in Canada. To learn more about the Legacy of Hope Foundation and the work that we do, please visit legacyofhope.ca.
On this week's episode of Roots and Hoots, we are joined by Elder Vince Kicknosway from Bkejwanong First Nation. Vince is a husband, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. In this interview, he reflects on his childhood experiences, including attending an Indian day school and later being separated from his family as part of the Sixties Scoop. Through his healing journey, Vince found his way back to following the traditional ways and has become a source of guidance and support to so many. Please enjoy this special episode of Roots and Hoots.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this podcast of Roots and Hoots. My guest today is Vince Kicknosway from Ottawa, Pottawatomi. I'm Gordon Spencer, your host for this podcast. Hello, Vinny. How are you today?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Gordon.
Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your background, where you come from, your family, your community, that sort of thing.
Oh, certainly. I'm originally a treaty status band member of Bkejwanong First Nation, southwestern Ontario, between Windsor and Sarnia, Ontario. And my family, my mother is both my parents, my grandparents, and my great-grandfather, as far as I could go back to when I was at birth. And they're all from Bkejwanong. And I learned, it was never emphasized to us as infants about our identity. It's just the fact that we were on a reservation, and I later learned that we belonged to the Three Fires Confederacy, and it consists of Pottawatomi, Odawa, and Ojibwe. Yeah, it's what I understand.
Okay, so those are like three distinct groups in terms of language, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Three Fires.
Yes.
Where's your community? Like, where's it located? You said somewhere between Sudbury and Windsor.
No, between Windsor, Ontario, and Sarnia, right along the border of the St. Clair River, and right across from us, our reserve, is Michigan.
Yeah.
United States.
Okay. Yeah. Close to the border.
Yeah, we're right on the border.
Yeah, really? Yeah. Okay. How many children do you have, Vinny?
I have 4.
4?
And I have 11 grandchildren.
Wow.
And I have 3 great-grandchildren.
Wow, you are blessed, man.
Thank you.
And do you speak your native language?
I did. At early in my stage of life, but I was severely punished.
Wow.
In grade 2.
Yeah.
My kindergarten teacher didn't mind my speaking the language, but she was female, and I got into grade 2, and we had a male teacher.
Yeah.
And he was strict, and this was Indian day schools, and I would speak the language, and I got punished severely. I would come home with straps, bruises, and everything else. Had many detentions.
Yeah.
And my mother, she went to residential school at Shingwak.
Yeah.
And finally, after seeing so many of the abrasion on my hands, she asked me why, and I said, well, I was just simply speaking the language. And she said, don't speak the language. So from then on, I had to progress to learn English real quick. That was my main way. And like I say, it was challenging. It was difficult. I couldn't understand why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did any of your families attend the residential school? You mentioned your mother did, right? And,
Yes.
Or the Sixties Scoop. Tell us about which residential school did your mother go to?
Shingwak.
Shingwak.
Yeah, up near Sault Ste. Marie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did anybody that you know of was involved in the 60s Scoop?
Yes, I am.
You were?
Yes, I am.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
My mother died. My mother passed at an early age. At the age of around 8, 9, I was deemed for residential school, being the eldest of 8 children, and somehow or another, my aunts and uncles, and to my knowledge, my grandmother went to residential school, but they wouldn't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So when the passing of my mother, and my father was alcoholic, he did work, but he still liked to consume alcohol.
Yeah.
So they, somehow or another, it leaked out that we were not being properly taken care of. And so the system came in, the Children's Aid, and they decided that we were to be separated and taken away. I don't remember who had fought for me not going to residential school. I was of age to go, but somehow or another, they managed to say, no, sorry, you still have to be separated and taken. So I was taken from my siblings, my brothers and sisters, and my family.
Yeah.
And I was entered into the adoption foster system.
Yeah.
So the churches, I was designated to church families. And so that's where I became a part of that 60 Scoop group. Yeah, being taken away from all my family.
Yeah. What about your brothers and sisters?
I don't know. They wouldn't. Unfortunately, I'm the eldest.
Are they still around?
No.
No?
No.
No.
I do have one brother that we don't seem to have eye to eye yet in contact, but all my rest of my family, brothers, sisters, have passed into the spirit world.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
You attained a degree in social work at the age of 50. Attended George Brown College and received a certificate from the University of Oklahoma. You attended George Brown College and received a certificate from the University of Oklahoma, all while working full-time. This is quite an achievement. How did you decide on this path, and how did you manage to do all that while working full-time?
Shortly, we will get into a definition of my most recent employ. And along there, in one of those periods, I was the healing and wellness worker.
Right.
And prior to that, actually, the community development worker. And I began reaching out and promoting Odawa Native Friendship Center within the regional municipalities and agencies and Native organizations. So I realized and recognized that the children and the youth, because one of my first actual payment salaried position with the Odawa Native Pension Center was the youth program coordinator.
Okay.
So then I became aware of how important education was. And so I started promoting more in that capacity. And so I said, well, why not return back to school? Because I don't, I even have a grade 10. I have a grade 9. Mm-hmm. But just so happens that one of my directors at the Odawa Native Pension Center had asked me to go and speak on behalf of himself at Carleton University to talk about the social dynamic areas relating to Indigenous peoples. So I did. It just so happened that in amongst the crowd were an Indigenous professor, a Mi'kmaq professor, and a very interested Métis professor. And when I concluded my discussion in sharing what my personal view in relation to the social dynamics that are affecting Indigenous peoples from a social work point of view, I departed, and they came after me and caught me before the elevators, and they introduced, the Mi'kmaq professor introduced an opportunity. He asked me, would I be interested in going to obtain a social work, go back to school. Mm-hmm. I said I would think about it. So I had asked, I researched around and spoke to a few Indigenous peoples that went in the courses of social work, and I finally made a decision, okay, and that was on reserve. It started these professors started this Indigenous social work program, starting at Kittigan-Zibi. Then it branched to Kahnawake. Then it branched a little further. So I started at Kahnawake, and that's where I started at the age of 50, realizing and recognizing the importance for our youth and to continue in school.
Yeah. Did you live there, or you were working at the time, right?
Yes, I was full time.
So was it through the computer?
Nope, it was.
So you drove there?
I drove.
Holy jeez.
Yes, I drove there on weekends.
Weekends.
And evenings.
Yeah, wow.
So I thank the executive directors and my supervisors at the time had understanding why I found education an important part in life, but not only for myself, but to promote an awareness for the community.
Yeah. You worked at the Odawa Native Friendship Center for over 40 years.
Yes, I did.
And left such an important mark. What are some of your fondest memories, and what were your various roles or jobs while you were there? You mentioned your jobs: healing and wellness worker, economic development worker, youth worker. I must add at this point that I was the executive director when you were one of the, I think you were the economic development worker at the time.
I was community development
development worker,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I worked with you. I was the executive director, and you were the community development worker. And I cherished that time we had, working together at the Friendship Center.
Thank you.
And it was always a pleasure working with you. But I just wanted to mention that. So what were some of the fondest memories you had while working in your role as, the various roles you had at the Friendship Center?
If I may go back just a little real quickly, I started actually worked with the federal government here in Ottawa for 2 to 3 years. Then on my most introduction to the Odawa Native Pension Center, an Ojibwe woman from Curve Lake, she worked with the board of directors to create the Odawa Native Friendship Center. So she was the employment counselor at Canada Manpower, and she wanted to broaden programs. So that's how, and I happened to be working with Canada Manpower at that time. So she got a program started with the Odawa Native Friendship Center. And so when that contract was completed, I then became a volunteer with the Friendship Center. And they introduced the youth program for me, that there was funding's going to become available. So I applied for that, and I did win that successfully. And I created mostly sports, events, activities. Then I worked along with obtaining a bus driver's license, and worked with the Little Beavers program to shuttling programs to events and cultural activities. Then I moved into community development for 12 years. That's where I broadened the focus of the Odawa Native Friendship Center to the regional municipal agencies and Native organizations. And that's how I became aware of also the importance of incarceration. I worked 27 years through Odawa with the understanding of the executive director and my supervisors, so that I was able to take time to go to the incarcerated institutions for those 27 years to help Indigenous men, to help them understand and hope that there would be some benefit and change in their lifestyle.
Yeah.
So then I became aware of a position with the Ministry of Community and Social Services, and that was the Healing and Wellness Program. Then I worked there for 20 years and was recognized by the ministry, and by that time the programs started to expand. And so the most recent one was the Kije Anishinaabe Nian and the Cultural Resource Coordinator. And by that time, I started to realize the change that I was making in my lifestyle from a blue collar to a white collar, as they would say. And I began to focus in on the cultural dynamics spiritually, emotionally, and as much as I possibly could to introduce that to the community. And so that's where...
Yeah. You, where did you start? Like, what building? The Friendship Center has gone through so many buildings, eh?
Yes, they have.
And during your time.
Yes.
And where was the first one that you started working?
Waller Street.
Waller Street.
Yes.
Okay, that was the first building that the Friendship Center had.
No, it wasn't.
No?
No. Father Whalen and Edith Weetung Ojibwe and a Polish man was the ones that worked together in coordinating the Friendship Center here in Ottawa, because they became aware of the different Friendship Centers in Canada that were becoming developing. So it started on a little in the parish hall on Eccles Street, I think. I'm not sure, but it began in the bottom because they started to notice an increase of high school students and post-secondary.
Native students.
There was an increase beginning to show. So that's when they decided, okay, we're going to expand and create more programs.
Yeah. Why do you think it's moved around so much?
Probably funding. More than likely. I would have to say that, like I say, and also the expansion to the number of administration and board of directors that recognize the importance to have a larger facility to accommodate the programs that were expanding and increasing. So
So you must have met, like, in all the time you've been in Ottawa, over 40 years, maybe 50 years?
44.
Yeah, so you must have met so many people, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous over the years. Like I've been here not quite as long as you have, probably close to 40, but I've met a lot of people. A lot of people seem to, they come here to work, Indigenous people, and then they end up going back to their community. Do you find the same thing?
I find now, because of the high profile and the importance of education, I find a high increase in that awareness. What unfortunately I've seen is that because it's such a fast-moving city, coming from a rural community, you get caught up in the elements in the city and you get distracted, and for some reason or another they drop out and return back to the reserve.
Right.
But the most important is that housing was a huge factor, I found, on our reserve. So a number of the people that I understand from other reserves were moving away because of housing.
Right.
So will you move where to? The city. City has more programs and services. So that's where I found it's starting to show that huge increase in the Indigenous population and whatnot happened.
Yeah. When I started working at Gudawa, they just completed a survey with the Indigenous people in Ottawa, and the biggest issue at the time was housing, and so the board of directors instructed me to get on the ball and get this ball rolling to create a housing program, and that's how we created Giggle Non-Profit Housing. Yeah.
Yes.
We've had a number of members from our community who took on the volunteer role of buying housing units in Ottawa, and that was the beginning of Giggle Non-Profit Housing.
Yeah. And so fortunate that that was created, that organization, because it have equally with CMHC the number of Inuit housing units and Indigenous housing units.
Right.
And the unfortunate part of that is the single people, they focus more on families.
Right.
And that's understanding right for that, you know.
Yeah.
The Legacy of Hope Foundation has produced 30 exhibitions that shed light on Indigenous history. Exhibitions are mobile, standalone, and provide a unique museum-like experience that include first-hand Indigenous testimonies of the residential school system and Sixties Scoop. The exhibitions promote healing and encourage acts of reconciliation. They can be hosted in schools, offices, parliaments, galleries, or any public space across Canada. To learn more about our exhibitions and borrowing, please contact our exhibitions department at exhibitions@legacyofhope.ca.
You do many speaking engagements, cultural presentations, and ceremonies across the country. Can you please tell us more about your work, who you do this with, and what you've taken away from these diverse experiences?
I would have to say that when I first started with in the community development role and started realizing, and then all of a sudden the Ontario Federation of, it used to be Indian Friendship Centers, it's now changed to Indigenous Friendship Centers, they began to expand services and increased the workload to match the salary that they felt should be compatible with regular mainstream. So within that, we began to become aware of how important the number of people that each city, there was that, as you had indicated earlier, there was that recognition to the increase of Indigenous peoples moving into the urban setting because of employment, housing, you name it, fleeing violence and whatnot. So that's where I realized I had to take up a choice for myself to continue, because I really enjoyed working with the executive directors, administration, and the program people. There was some uniqueness about the Friendship Center profile and what it stood for. And it allowed me to be able to branch further and look at the spiritual aspect of what life meant to be. Because I didn't and wasn't brought up with that. And being placed into Christian homes, most definitely the religious portion that was demanded of me, I kind of was really honored to have elders with the Ontario Federation. When we went to training, when elders would come in and share their stories and teachings, and I found it so amazing. And I don't blame anyone, my parents or grandparents or anyone else from the reserve, but I found it fascinating. So that's when I realized this is something I want. How do I go about it? And that's when I started to approach. I realized how to approach an elder, present tobacco, and present a gift, and the reason for you coming there. And I said I wanted to know more about my identity as an Indigenous person, and also also knowing the fact that I was given a number by the Indian Affairs and whatnot. So I just wanted to expand on that and learn more about it. So I was so grateful to have the opportunity to meet various elders to expand my growth and knowledge in the spiritual aspect of the traditional customs, practices, and beliefs.
Yeah. You've lived in Ottawa for many years and have met many people during your time here. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the local Indigenous community over the years?
I would have to say that I've been here 51 years now, and I'm very honored, and I recognize the Anishinaabe, and Algonquin territory that this area is a part of. And I always mention that each time I go out, and when I'm invited to provide cultural presentations, openings, closings, I have learned to speak some of the language come back. I do not speak it fluently, but I have enough language there that I can do my acknowledgement and recognition to that, because that's what helped me realize in those grandmothers and grandfathers that I approached to learn more about my identity, is gave me the opportunity to find more and meet more grandmothers and grandfathers, aunties and uncles who followed those customs, practices, and beliefs and language. So it began to learn a little more, and I found it encouraging to expand my personal lifestyle without mood-altering substance.
Yeah.
And so that's when I started back to school, and I furthered that by realizing the lifestyle that my parents and my grandparents lived. That's when I had an opportunity when the University of Oklahoma came in and brought a course at Montreal. I jumped at it, and I wanted to learn more so that I could share more of that perspective to other Indigenous peoples in relating to alcohol consumption and the effect that it has on us. We wonder why Indigenous peoples have a high rate of obesity and diabetes. It's because of sugar, and there's a huge amount of sugar in the contents of alcohol.
Yeah. Have you ever gone back to your community?
Yes, I do, on a more regular basis.
Is that right?
At first, I realized I would say 30 years ago, I started actually in the spiritual way of life almost 40 years ago. And I found it important to reconnect, and that's where I did find my brothers and sisters, and I was able to reconnect with them in their living years.
Yeah.
And I realized the importance for my grandparents. I was closer to my mother's mother.
Yeah.
And because we ended up there every time there was a lot of partying going on, we'd end up at my mother's parents, my grandmother and grandfather's.
Yeah.
And so I got
When
to
you were a
learn.
kid, or?
Yes, when I was a child.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the early age of
Okay.
4, 5, 6,
Yeah, so
7.
you have to escape to your grandfather's house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. And I also have to applaud them because they introduced the hunting, fishing skills that I acquired
Yeah.
at a young age.
Yeah.
So that I was able to do that,
Yeah.
you know.
They call. I have some cousins too that, like, I come from a reserve, and I grew up speaking my language, and I still speak it today because I learned it from my grandparents. They raised me, so that's how I learned my language. Because every time, even when I was grew as an adult, I still had to converse with them, right? So I was able to maintain my language. But I have some cousins who did not live on the reserve, who lived in the town, I don't know, maybe 100 kilometers away. And they all they spoke was English. Even though their father spoke Cree and their mother spoke Cree, but the whole family spoke English. They were English-speaking town. There's half white and half indigenous. So, but it was predominantly English-speaking community, and they can't speak Cree. They understand it, but they can't speak it. They will speak it if they have to. You know what I mean? And that's what they call the silent speakers. You're probably a silent speaker.
Yes, I am.
And you know it, but you, for some reason, you don't speak it, or you don't want to. Or
It was the same thing with my grandparents. They would not speak, even though they spoke fluently, because every time guests, neighbors would pass by,
Yeah.
who came daily to pick up their mail, they would stop in and they would fluently speak the language.
Yeah.
Why was it that they wouldn't speak? My grandparents wouldn't speak the language to me.
Yeah.
It's because of residential schools.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I understood later in life why my mother had said, don't speak the language.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were just thinking in the back of their mind, in order to get somewhere in life, then learn English.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what my grandfather used to always tell me. He would say that there's nothing I can teach you that's going to make you survive in the real world, in the outside world. Because what I can teach you, you will know it, but it's not going to be much use to you in the outside world. So he didn't want to, but he let me go to residential school. I didn't have much choice, really. It was against the law for parents and grandparents or whatever to refuse to let their children go to residential school.
Right.
But to this day, I have not known one person who went to jail for not sending their kid to residential school. You know that?
Yeah.
And I know many people who never went to residential school, and their parents would usually go on the land before the Indian agent came into town on the reserve. So that's how they were able to get away from going to, because the Indian agent would write a letter to the band council, right, and say, I'll be there on this certain date,
Yes.
recruiting kids.
Yes.
And
well, this is where my father's mother,
yeah,
she went to residential school, so at an earlier age, and by the time she started a family, and there were 6 in their family.
Yeah.
And the 2 youngest, my dad being one of them, she didn't want him to go to residential school, so she fled to the United States with my father.
Okay.
So my father never did go to residential school, but he spent many years in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any teachings or ceremonies you've been part of that you feel especially important to share with listeners?
If you don't mind, I would like to share back when I was in community development, learning about more of Indigenous culture and finding very much interest in it. And so I was introduced to a sweat. And this elder had indicated to me that he seen something, a potential possibility within myself. And so he introduced me to other elders and grandmothers and grandfathers who walked that way of life. And when I met this one elder at a group, and I was so amazed at the presentation that this elder made, I sat there after the session was all completed, and I asked that elder, would you like help with anything? And he said, no, I'm fine. And he looked at me and he says, I see a wonderful aura. I said, excuse me? I don't know what you mean by an aura. He says, those are the colors all around you. And he says, but I don't have the ability to define what those colors mean. If you put your tobacco down and you do your own prayers, somehow, somewhere, someone will cross your path. And sure enough, as I was going to school through Carleton University on this Indigenous social work program in Kahnawake, I was working with clay, and it's part of Mother Earth. And this woman spoke about the fact that she had learned how to read and know colors. And I said, wow. So I ran to my car, and I always carry tobacco, and I always carry a gift or some kind. And I said to her, this is what this one elder had seen, these colors around me. And so she took me apart personally and privately and explained to me what those colors meant for me, and that somewhere, somehow, someone's going to cross your path, because that's when you continue to pray, those messages will be received by various people. And so I guess that's where that potential began to grow. And realize from the sweat, they moved on to different cultural activities and ceremonies that I started attending, along with powwows, and the round dances started to come up. And so I just started expanding more in realizing, recognizing how important it is to live as best as you can a healthy lifestyle and whatnot. So I really very appreciated to what the Friendship Center has, and all the directors and administrators in the program who realized and recognized that this is something that I found important, was to expand and bring more awareness, not only to our own Indigenous community, but also to expand, have those the regional municipal agencies become aware of how important it is to recognize Indigenous peoples and the spiritual value of who we are and what we have.
Yeah.
So those ceremonies began to expand from the sweat lodge into different fasting. And on the shaking tent, when I got to speak through shaking tent, through the conductor, to speak to my mother after 50 years. And it was amazing. It just totally, I totally love that opportunity, and there's a lot more there. I still have a lot more. The late Angus Ba Pontiac, I went into the woods with him with gifts and tobacco, and I had a sad, confused mind and sad heart. And he said, "Son, what is it that you come to ask?" And I explained to him, and he accepted the tobacco and the gift, and he told me 2 stories. And I remember prior to going to him, this one grandmother had shared, listen closely to those gifted ones, those elders, those grandmothers and grandfathers. And if they tell you a story, your answer is in the stories. And so when Angus shared the story of how the beaver lives in 4 seasons and what the role and responsibility of that beaver is, and you'll find your answer. And so he told me all about the different ants, to his knowledge, in the world. And he said, your answer is in the stories. And yes, I did find it. So I went back to the grandmother and I said, he told me all these stories. And I said, why didn't he give me my answer? And she says, who's going to benefit from it? He is. Mm-hmm. You're to listen closely with the elements and the abilities that you have. So this is where I'm speaking now more about this to our indigenous population. And not only that, bringing an awareness to ending violence against indigenous peoples and LGBTQ, and to all the non-indigenous municipal agencies here in Ottawa, so that I can educate them about the importance of who we are, and the importance that they have to become aware of who we are also. Yeah. So the ceremonies really expanded me, and I expanded more in regards to the higher ceremonies. Will be my 8th year in Sundance, and I've attended rain dance. I did my 4 years of fasting to understand prior to Sundance and all that. So it's an important part in life to help in more indigenous peoples that would like to consider a healthier, happier lifestyle in life.
What do you think happens when a person passes away?
I have ceremonies knowledge of that perspective, and I give thanks to the different grandmothers and grandfathers that have shared with me in recognizing the passing, the celebration of life. Yeah. And so these are some of the areas that I began to expand and share, that there is life after death, because I've had that opportunity to speak to my mother, who has been passed for over 50 years.
What was that like? Tell us.
Awesome, totally awesome. It was scary, but I really said, wow, can this individual actually reach beyond and receive through this ceremony to speak to someone that has passed so long time ago. Wow. It's even televised on APTN. Sorry, I don't mean to, but there's a spirit talker. He's a Mi'kmaq who speaks, and I had the chance to meet him. Yes. And so he speaks to those who are beyond. So
that's a great show.
Oh, it is. It's wonderful.
That's kind of why I've seen it, and I wanted your opinion on it.
Yes.
That's such an awesome statement. And what you've spoken about is so great. And I have one last question for you, and it's about reconciliation. We've heard this word being used a lot in Canada for the last few years. What do you think when the word reconciliation, when you hear the word, what comes to your mind to make Canada a good country, a better country? That's really what it's all about, right? Try to make our country better. People to understand each other, love each other, respect each other.
Yes.
And so what does that come to? What does that word bring to you?
Well, the late Murray Boss Sinclair, our youngest son, Thielen, had the opportunity to meet with him in Senate. And when that became apparent of what truth and reconciliation there is, to my knowledge, or what information I had come upon, was there was one word left out of truth and reconciliation. It was truth, healing, and reconciliation. But I found that because of residential schools, too many, if you haven't gone through the healing process to understand what healing means and find within the depth of yourself the recognition of the impact of residential schools, 60s Scoop, the hospital, sanatoriums, etc. Because I've gone through that. I lost a whole ear because of hospitalization. Yeah. And so when I reached out to understand that, so that I could hopefully share some of that insight to others in regards to that healing, but I found that they excluded that middle word, truth, healing, reconciliation. Yeah. So first and foremost, when I took up and met this faith keeper, and I approached him with, many years ago, I approached him with tobacco and gifts. And he had indicated that there was those 7 grandfather teachings. And so that's what I went through. And he said, go away and take whatever one you see fit first that would have an impact on yourself. And so I chose love. Mm-hmm. And I had to do that for 1 full year to understand that. And I took all the rest behavior, all the other elements to the 7 grandfather teachings, 1 per year. Wow. So it's like having that recognition. But it was that grandmother, that faith keeper's mother, who had said to me, shared a lot of teachings and stories of the traditional customs and whatnot. And she seen something in me, as she had explained. And so that's why she said to me, there is one word that you may want to examine for yourself, and that was commitment. If we haven't recognized what had happened through residential schools, 60 Scoop, Indian Day schools, and the sanatoriums, everything else, the healing portion of it, if you're not going to endure or go through some of that to help yourself understand that, you're going to have difficulty. And this is where I find today a number of incidents, situations, and circumstances that affect us as Indigenous peoples, that we have a challenge of maintaining a good way of life for everyone. Yeah. You know, so it's an important part. So when I speak in cultural presentations and workshops with Indigenous peoples, I have shared about truth before I even go to reconciliation. I share about truth. And that's where, when I was, my wife and son, our youngest son, we were a part of the Moose Hide campaign, and we're also part of the missing and murdered women's group. And this one woman had shared at one of the conferences about her choice of change. And when I heard her story, her teaching, her way of life she had chosen, I approached her and I said, may I use that in my profile of my presentations to our Indigenous peoples and whatnot? And that was, she said, I'm going to be a change maker. And she said, I'm going to begin by shaking with my left hand. and that comes truthfully from your heart. So in Truth and Reconciliation, I feel that we need to begin to make those choices of changes. Because if you look at long ago, the warriors, they had a shield on their left hand. Mm-hmm. They had the sword in the right to defend and kill. So if we take that shield from our left, take it away, and let's open up ourselves to understand where the healing needs to begin and talk truthfully. It's going to take, I find, quite some time for us as individuals to really find that truth within ourselves, to make that commitment to making a healthier lifestyle. Mm-hmm. This one grandmother said one time, she said, it's not a matter of how many people show up to a circle. If one shows up, that's all that matters. Mm. And I always remember that. And so it's how important I made that personal commitment to this lifestyle of living without mood-altering substance, so that people become aware with the elements abilities that they have for what they see. And if they see a person living without mood-altering substance, then there must be some hope. Mm-hmm. Hope that people can make that choice of a healthier way of life for themselves.
Any last comments?
I'm appreciative for the invitation for mm-hmm. this, for the Hope Foundation. Yeah. And it's an opportunity for people to take a particular look at oneself and find out their personal resources. And if you have the opportunity and you don't speak the language, because it's an important part, and that's where I had to go back to learning as much as I possibly can to speak in the language to the Creator, so that when I put that Sama down to Shkokemekwa, it has a better meaning for me within my heart and soul to know that the Creator and is hearing my answers and providing that support and guidance in myself to continue in life. I love my brothers and sisters that have entered the spirit world, and I always go back to the reserve as often as I can to go to the graveyard, mm-hmm. to visit and put tobacco down to all my family members. And I'm very appreciative of that. But to those who still am, and I'm very happy for the introduction of the language on the reserve now. And it's a hope that maybe, again, in the future, there'll be something there that I hope to see and whatnot, but that's all we can look at. Before we get into reconciliation, it's like being able to really truthfully find that process of reconciling mm-hmm. with one another, and well, not only yourself, but to others, and mm-hmm. to be able to hope that there is. And that's why I applaud the Hope Foundation to getting out there and reaching out to other people through even these podcasts and everything. Yeah. It's an important part in society today to help others. Mm-hmm.
Very well said, Vinny.
Thank you very kindly.
Thank you for being our guest, and on behalf of the Legacy Hope Foundation, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this.
I thank you very kindly for the invitation. Miigwech.
Yeah.
Roots and Hoots is a podcast project produced by the Legacy of Hope Foundation. For episode show notes, please visit the podcast description and make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. For more information about the work we do, please visit legacyofhope.ca.